Hello!
Hello! La, la, la.
Welcome to the Second Button podcast. I'm Andrew. This is Brian.
I'm Brian.
We're your
Hi.
co-hosts, if you didn't figure that part out already.
Yeah.
And today we're doing The Parking Garage. It was originally aired on October 30th, 1991, and
Yes.
the DVD matches up with Netflix.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's episode 6.
Okay, so episode 6, and I was wondering, this wasn't one that was recorded earlier. What was the one that was like on season 2, but they never actually aired it? It was on
Oh,
season...
that's the, I can't remember
We
the
already
name
get
of
to
it.
that?
It's the one where they go and they get stuck at the person's house. They're getting picked up and the driver's
Okay.
late. And, yeah.
Okay, so
It's
that
coming up
hasn't
soon.
happened yet.
Yeah, it's coming
I
up
was wondering
soon.
if it was this one, but no. So,
But this one here is
Mhm.
the second one where it all takes place in one spot, just like the Chinese restaurant.
yes.
But
and
the
it's
Chinese
not-
restaurant was one set. This one, they didn't
Uh-huh.
film it in a parking garage. They filmed it on set because closing a parking garage was too expensive. So what they did was they took apart the whole Seinfeld stage, like the apartment and everything. They tore it all apart and they built a parking garage out of foam and stuff. And
Yeah.
they made the ceiling stayed in place. And then the columns they moved around to make it look like it was a different area of the parking garage.
Yeah.
And there's spots where there's great big mirrors. So you see like the two pillars and then like built out of concrete. In between is mirrors. And there's many times when you know that, watching the episode, that you can catch Jerry walking and then you can see his reflection on the other side.
Yeah.
So they make it look huge by using mirrors. And there's many times where you see people walking towards the mirror, but you're not paying attention to that. So it just looks bigger and it worked. So
Yeah. I was, reading up on this episode as well because I could have sworn. So sometimes we'll look at scripts for the show, and then I mainly, try and just write my notes as I'm watching it, which can take a while. So a 20-minute episode can take me 2 hours to write for the podcast. And so I'm like, okay, so sometimes I'll refer to the SeinfeldScripts.com or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that they were drastically off. There were parts that they were missing, or that I'm like, who fact checked this? And then I was wondering, I'm like, maybe this was one of the episodes that they reshot. Because I know in future episodes that they did reshoot ones with different Frank Costanzas.
Mm-hmm.
They had like the OG one, and then da-da-da. So I was convinced. I'm like, okay, that's got to be out. So I was reading more on the episode, and I did see that same fact, that it was actually the Seinfeld stage. They took away the bleachers for the crowd. It was just one set.
Yeah.
And then the mirror thing, I'm like, oh, I didn't catch it because I watched this episode, before doing the notes for the show, and I'm like, I didn't catch the mirror thing at all. Yeah. And then once you know it, it's blatantly. I'm like,
it's obvious when you know.
It's all warped and shit, and you can actually see people walking towards it. I'm like, why is that like all of a sudden? But the shots are so quick, you're not really paying attention. You're basically just like, oh, look how big this thing is. They're lost. Ha ha ha. Kramer's carrying a air conditioner. That's funny.
and Kramer was actually carrying a fucking air conditioner. He didn't want an empty box. He didn't want foam. Yeah. He wanted the air conditioner in there, so he had the weight, and he's actually feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And they put the fragile sticker on it to cover up the name of the company that made the air conditioner, just because the whole.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, little, I don't know. Did you know about this episodes in this one?
Yeah, a lot of work went into this one for the set. Like those people worked their asses off.
A little article that I saw. It's like they had a ball. They loved it because it was like, cool. Let's make this. And how to shoot it was a lot of fun because of like doing the different angles and how to make this look like a vast space and different.
Yeah, as an artist in the field, it would have been interesting to work on.
More than just your 3-camera in Jerry's apartment shot. They're like, okay, we had to get creative with the angles and stuff like that. And then apparently for the 4 of them, the actors, it was a real pain in the ass. Like long nights and da-da-da.
Sleeping on the floor, getting their makeup done, laying on the floor.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So,
I'm like, oh, geez, I didn't know it was, this episode was that much of a burden. But I used to think about it. It's like, had to be in one shot, and they had to get multiple angles. So for them probably having to do this over and over and over again.
Yeah. It'd be so annoying.
Yeah. And then with Kramer, the whole carrying the air conditioner, he probably thought, oh, this will be great. Okay, now you're doing that every day.
Yeah, and he said for when they're practicing, I know the word, when they're practicing for the scenes, He did it too, so that he would like fatigue himself and actually look like he was tired carrying that. So,
so yeah. Anyways, so all of that, and for the episode beginning here, it's a great episode. But let's get to it. So, starts off with a bit about how it's hard to find places at the mall, the different shops, and it's like, oh, you can't find it. It's like, oh, they have a "You Are Here" map, but it's hard to read, hard to navigate because it's upright, it's not flat on the ground. And it's like, oh, it's like you're walking on the ground. You really got to, be a fucking genius to figure that out, apparently.
Yeah.
If you had suction cups on your feet, then you stood on the map, it'd be a lot easier. It's like, oh, I got to go right at the fountain. And then he does like an act out, like he's walking around the mall with suction cups on his feet. And people are like, oh, there's a suction cup guy. The joke was like, I mean, I guess. Maybe
it was a joke that he wrote and said out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. You did it.
Yeah.
It was just like, because it's a mall, they're lost, so they're like in the episode, it's like, just shove it in there, it's gonna fucking work.
Yeah.
This thing is too big to fail now, so whatever, just do a shit joke that has to do with the mall. Go for it. I think maybe because I'm like, I don't know, I'm not a fucking moron. I can figure out a map.
Yeah.
Or maybe because I play like, video games, and nowadays like with map and cursor and stuff like that, you're following, you're not like you're playing Breath of the Wild. I'm like, yeah, I can read a fucking map here. I know where to go.
You're in the mall and you just put one of those little pillars of light on the things, so you know where the store is. Then you run, and then you can't run because you ran out of endurance. Yeah. So you got to stop and huff for a little bit. Then you start running again.
I just start breaking open everything.
Yeah. Pottery Barn hates you.
Yeah. And just start storing
Smashing
stuff.
Pots. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, hold on to this apple. I'll cook it with this meat later.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I mean, the joke was okay. It's fine. So it opens up with the gang. They're walking down a stairwell, and Kramer's leading the way. He's holding a box with an air conditioner. And then George is saying, they only had one. It was a scam the whole time. Like, they went to that mall to get a deal on an air conditioner unit. They were all going to get air conditioner units. And then Elaine's like, oh, well, I didn't get one either. Da-da-da-da-da. And then Kramer offers, like, oh, well, you can have this one. And then George says, oh, it's not enough BTUs for my apartment.
Yeah.
Which I didn't get. So I'm like, okay, Kramer got the one. But then if they had more, George wouldn't have gotten it because it's not enough BTUs for his living room.
He was planning on getting two. I don't know what his plan was.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell was the point of that? Like, I mean, I know it's not like groundbreaking, but I'm like, why did they even go?
I think George just hunts down reasons to be unhappy. Yeah. He's just like, I can't just be happy. I need to find a reason to be unhappy.
Yeah. So it's just, that part. I'm like, wait, it didn't make sense. Kramer, you could have had the one Kramer was going to give you, but he's like, oh, it's not big enough. I'm like, then you wouldn't have bought the one anyways if they had more. I'm just saying. I'm just being nitpicky and biased. Yeah. Sorry, writers. I win. Bye-bye. Brian Smart. Brian Smart. So anyways, Jerry mentions how it feels like everybody, is doing something cool on a Saturday. Everybody's doing something better than he is. People are out there. They're on big picnics. They're getting burgers. They're making out on blankets while he's at some shit mall in Jersey while his friends find the cheapest air conditioner. I just like that. Picnics, burgers, making out on blankets. And then George is, mentions that, like, you should see the lengths that his dad would go to buy a new car. Like, he'd go state to state. He'd be gone for weeks just looking for that deal on a car. And kind of reminds me of my dad. So he got a deal on a new car like almost 20 years ago. And he won't let that go. Like, he's like, I think under $7,000 cash for a brand new car. Not a used one, not like a brand new one. So hasn't left a yacht. Hasn't left a yacht lot yet. God, I can't talk.
Bought a car off a yacht.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, the way cars are priced nowadays, it's like a fucking yacht. So he won't let that go now. Still, it's like you wouldn't be caught dead buying a car with the prices that they charge nowadays. So my dad, I'm like, that's 2 decades ago, and you were lucky for the deal that you got, anyways. Like for the dealership, I'm sure it was like, I think it was like a past year model that never sold, so they priced it like that, and then he went in with cash like a shark. He said, "This is what I got today." He's like, "All right, you got it." So he still thinks, I'm like, yeah, I think I can get that deal today because he needs to buy a new car. I'm like, you're never gonna find something like that ever again. He's like, yeah, it's like, you know how much to buy a new truck would be nowadays. I'm like, he's like,
he might be able to buy that same car for $7,000.
Yeah,
and a 20-year-old one.
If I bought like a new F-150, I'm like, I don't know, it'd be $50,000. Like, no, not that much, $35,000. I'm like, okay, what was your point here? He just, yeah, it's funny though. He's like this, like, I bought my car 20 years ago. I'm sure they were just like, get this fucking red Focus manual off our lot. And he's like, sold.
Yeah,
but he was so stoked on that thing. He still is. Anyways, so back to it. So as they're chatting, Kramer's just kind of looking around, and they're following him like he's the leader because he knows where his car is. Elaine got some goldfish, and George, comments. He's like, "Yeah, fish. What do they do?" And then she comes right back at him. What do you do?
Yeah,
like, what are you good for, kind of thing.
But
I just like that little back and forth.
The 90s was a big time for goldfish. Everyone, like, you go to the store, there'd be a pet store that had goldfish. Walmart had goldfish. Like, you could go buy fish at Walmart. So for you kids out there listening to these 2 middle-aged chubby guys talking about Seinfeld, you could buy fish at Walmart when we were kids.
Just back in the day.
Yeah,
that was a thing. So, but I do like that little back and forth because George is being he's unhappy. He's being a dick for no reason. And then Elaine just like, yeah, Elaine just like puts him down right away. It's like, nah, what are you good for? So, and then he's asked the time, and then George mentions how he's always late. He's got to meet his parents at his place at 6:15 because he's taking them to a dinner and a show. And then Jerry says they're gonna hit traffic because it's 5 o'clock. It's rush hour. They're gonna hit that picnic and burger traffic. And then George mentions how he can never be on time. He's always got to rush. And I'm definitely can relate to George on that because I'm like, I feel like I'm always late. Even for this podcast, I'm usually pretty late by a couple minutes or so. Like,
last week or the week before, I'm like, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. You're like, good. I'm going to be 45 minutes late. And then the 45 minutes later, I'm like, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. And I show up, you're not there. I'm like, are you fucking ready?
I'm going to up the ante here.
Yeah.
So, of course, you can always get around with it by planning better,
Yeah.
Actually, be leaving on time or ahead of time. Somebody always what do you always say? It's like, oh, you have 1 minute to be on time, but you have the rest of the time to be late, something like that.
When I'm going to work, I aim to be 15 minutes early, and that way, I'm always 5 minutes early.
5 minutes late.
Yeah, I'm only 5 minutes late.
Yeah. So, anyways, one thing I did notice is how many people are in this parking garage that they're in. It's like a bustling metropolis.
There's a lot in the first scene. Like when they first open it, there's a lot.
There's so many goddamn people in that parking garage. It's like I've been in packed parking garages downtown and stuff like that. There's never that many people there.
Yeah,
I see half as many people. It's like that was one thing. I'm like, why do they get so many actors? They could have had half of that amount and it would have been fine.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people in this episode.
It almost made me feel like they were actually recording in a real parking garage, and they weren't extras. They were just people that were there. But
a lot of extras in this one for sure.
Yeah,
for example, I paused it and I saw 5 people in the background shot. I'm like, including the 4 of them. I'm like, that's so many people. I'm like, why did they? I don't think that was necessary.
Yeah,
and I'm just saying that's my observational humor. Seems
true.
like there's more people in the mall garage than there are in the mall.
What's the deal with all the people in the back?
What's the deal? Yeah, that's my boom, 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 boom. Anyways, so back to it. Kramer, he's looking around, and then we already know as the audience, Oh, you don't know where he's going. They haven't picked up on that yet.
Those
Jerry complains about
back in 1991 didn't know what was about to happen.
yeah, these numbskulls. I'm smart. So, anyways, Jerry complains how he has to go to the bathroom, and he's like, "You can't find bathrooms in these malls." Well, stuff like that, and then that kind of sets a scene that'll come in handy later.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jerry sees an attractive woman and kind of points her out to George, like, hey, get a load of this kind of deal. And then George goes on about how he doesn't, need that pointed out. Like,
George
here's
walks
a woman
over, slams $100 down on a car hood and says, I'm out.
Like, yeah, it's like, here's a beautiful woman you'll never be able to talk to. You'll never have a chance in hell going on a date with her. Get a load of this, George. And then Kramer says, oh, just go and talk to her. And you can't just go up and talk to a woman in a parking garage. George has a point there.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy.
Like, George, good on you. And then Jerry gets George with this little rib here. Like, oh, before you get within 15 feet of this woman, she'd have her finger on that mace button. It's like, so you point her out to George to say, like, hey, you could, go ask her out. Just to rib him, saying, like, she'll reject you right away. It's like, what the hell was that about? Yeah. And then Kramer just says, oh, that was a guy. I'm like, and then they move on. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it was weird.
I'm like, I don't know if that was supposed to carry on to something else or whatever. But
like you said in the script, it says she's fat, and Elaine says, oh, she's fat. And then
Kramer, they move on.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I don't know why. I feel like they wrote that in the script and thought, that's rude.
Yeah. So just calling her, calling her a guy, I guess is fine too. So maybe these were the original script or something like that, and they kind of go off of it. I was like I said, I was like looking, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of things that are off on the script compared to the actual show. Yeah. And I'm like, did they reshoot that? Did they edit it differently? Just the, anyways. But after that, Jerry has a tag on to like the, woman with the mace, bit right there. And right after that, which wasn't in the episode, he's like, she's like an expensive car with one of those motion sensor force field alarms. Any sudden movement in the area can set her off. Like, George is going to be like, hey, how's it going? She's like, alarm going. I'm like, yeah. So that was different. That was never in the episode.
Mm-hmm. So
anyways, I don't know how, accurate any of these, scripts actually are.
We should probably just use it as a guideline.
So, let's see. So, anyways, back to it. So, Kramer, he stops again, looking confused, and looking around, and it's apparent that they don't really know where the car is, that they're lost now. Was it on the blue level, the green level, the orange level? George is freaking out already. It's like, we're rats in some experiment. And then George, he's pissed, and he's like, oh, because he's got the whole, meeting his parents thing. And then, you should have written it down. How hard is that to write it down where you are? All the while, Kramer is fumbling with the AC unit. And, like Andrew had mentioned, it was an actual AC unit. So every time he's moving this thing around, it's like, Jesus. You not like wrench your back or something like that. No, he's kind of throwing it around like there's nothing in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're heavy. So, and they would have been heavier 30 years ago.
Yeah. With all those BTUs. At least it wasn't a Commando 8. So, Kramer's fumbling around with stuff, and it kind of has a wider shot, and I noticed that he's wearing some funky looking Chuck Taylors.
I had a note. They're like 3 different colors on the, like each panel's a different color. They were fantastic. I want them.
Very Joker-ish.
Yeah.
Red, green, and purple.
Mm-hmm.
Very twisted ass Chuck Taylors.
I'm the Joker, baby.
I'm the Joker, baby. Kramer's the Joker. Anyway, it's just like, they're cool looking Chuck Taylors, but it doesn't really seem like something Kramer would wear.
No, it felt weird. I pictured him wearing like penny loafers or something.
Yeah, Kramer's more of a classic man.
Mm-hmm.
So with the way he dresses. But anyways, that's one thing I did. I'm like, huh. And he's wearing Chucks.
I also had a note.
Nobody knows where this the car is. And this is when the camera does a couple of the shots showing the garage. And that's where everything, kind of showing how it's just vast. Everything looks the same. You can't really find the end of the garage, and that's where you really notice the mirror in the background shots, because you can see it's actually like they're kind of shaking a little bit.
Yeah,
and it was like 100% didn't notice it until I read that article. I'm like, oh, now it's like I'm pointing out, I'm like, God, I hope you get fired for that blunder. It looks like shit.
Yeah.
Like how like there's, I don't know, some people point out bad CGI in like these Marvel movies. Sometimes I'm like, people say like, oh, and Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm like, I thought it looked pretty good. I'm like, what the hell do I know? And I'm like, and then after people point it out, I'm like, yeah, that does look like shit.
If you just enjoy this movie, though, it's not as bad.
Mm-hmm.
Although
some of them are gonna be hard to enjoy.
The CGI in She-Hulk made it unenjoyable. The CGI in the actual She-Hulk, it was like drama crayons. It was awful. I'm not saying like, I could do better. I'm just saying that the people that work for the multi-billion company could probably do better.
No, we ran out of money for that.
Yeah. Ran out of time.
Yeah. All right. Just send them on in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Elaine, she's concerned about our goldfish. They can only live in that bag for a couple hours. And then Jerry's got to go to the bathroom. And then, Kramer said, oh, just go behind a car. Just go. And then, Jerry's, opposed to the idea. Kramer mentions how he could, really damage his bladder that way. Like, what is he could lose function in it. That's what happens with truckers. Is that adult diapers are a $600 million industry because of people losing control of their bladders. They're just pissing all over the place. And then, Kramer kind of, I think a couple times Jerry has offered to help him carry the AC unit, but he's like, oh, always just like, no, I'll do it. And then at this point, he's like, oh, I got an idea. I'll just set it behind this car here, and then we'll go find it and come back to it. So he makes a note, sets the AC unit down, like really
scratches that car up.
Dents, smacks it on this person's car. He even sets it down a couple different times on people's cars.
Yeah, I know. He got the antenna, which I don't think cars have those antennas anymore on the front end, but
my truck does.
Okay, Brian's truck does. But Brian's truck was made during this episode.
Yeah,
and he just like flops it down on other people's cars, and you get shot for that in Jersey today, I think.
Yeah, and then there's even parts where they're sitting on people's cars.
Yeah,
because they're waiting. I'm like, you can't do that.
Yeah,
as if somebody sat on my truck, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? I guess you're not going to damage it, but what the hell are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, make sure to note that it's at purple 23. Did we say that?
Yeah.
It's like, all right, take a note of that. On we go. So they're looking around, saying how confusing the color and numbering system is. It's like, oh, I think we're on, it goes up to 40. What color were we on? Da, 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 da. And then Jerry mentions like, maybe they're on the wrong floor. Like it could have been like, oh, there's other purple, and blue or whatever on other levels. That's when it kind of stops George in his tracks. Like, I never thought about that kind of thing. It's kind of funny. Yeah. I don't think George says anything, but he mentions that, and it just pans to George, just like, he's like, "Oh shit, we're really screwed. We're like, this is more than I could have comprehended initially. We're screwed."
It just got worse.
And then Jerry mentions that they should have written it down. It's like it should have had a pen and a pad to write that down. And then George, like, that's like his first thing that he says is like, I can't carry a pen because I think I'm gonna puncture my scrotum.
And then Kramer just pops out with a pen.
Yeah, just I got a pen.
Doesn't say anything.
Yeah, so they're falling apart. Jerry's got to pee. George's ear itches. Elaine's fish are dying. It's chaos. Then off screen here, you can hear a woman yelling at her child. She's pulling him, and I think she hits him off screen.
Yeah.
And George steps in. He's like, okay. He tells her, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And she immediately like tells him off. And the kid doesn't care for George either. Calls him ugly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slams the door in his face. It's kind of funny interaction.
I made a note and I said, child abuse in public? ? And then I thought maybe I should go to stop before in public. Just child abuse alone is probably wrong. It doesn't matter if you're in public.
Yeah.
And then Ashley's eagle eye knew that kid was in kindergarten cop.
The famous kid here.
Yeah. So you look familiar. I'm like, who's that kid? She goes, he's in kindergarten cop.
Yeah. But it's like, he just like, you're ugly. So the kid is like, almost like, you know what? Keep hitting that kid.
Keep beating him.
Fuck them. But it just like kind of shows like they're all, like people are all shitheads in their world. So whatever. So, and then Kramer shouts, you know, that he's found it. You know, and then they all excited, and it's like, oh, false alarm.
Yeah.
So, and then Elaine gets the idea that they should ask someone to drive them around the garage so they can look for the car. And Jerry's convinced that that'll never happen. Nobody's going to do that. And it just, that's agreed. That's super weird. I wouldn't do that.
No.
I'd be like every other character in the show, like, no. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Can you give me a ride? No.
Yeah, no.
Even, I think I was having a burger in a parking lot. And then somebody came up to my truck and like tried opening it. He's like, oh, hey, sorry, I'm late. I'm like, excuse me? And I'm like, oh, aren't you so-and-so? We're going to go to the job. And I'm like, no. Maybe assumed I was like a construction worker or something like that.
I did get in the wrong car and sit down once. Open the car door, sat down, look over. There's an old woman sitting there. I'm like, I'm in the wrong car. And she goes, I think you are, dear. I'm like, okay, bye. I got it and walked away. Like,
oops. He's like, oh. And then he's like, well, can you give me a ride to... I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm fucking eating my burger. And I'm going to go back to work. No. He's like, oh, okay. And then he just walks away like defeated. I'm like...
He thought you were an Uber.
Yeah. A shitty looking Uber. But anyways, it's a great... I probably wouldn't drive around a mall with strangers.
No.
Well, maybe if it was Elaine, you know. I can handle a little Jerry if it gets me a lot of Elaine. Shout out to anyone who gets that reference. It's this same show.
The same show. Have you ever watched Seinfeld?
You ever heard of this show called Seinfeld? Well, you're in for a treat. Wait till Newman shows up. Anyways, so Elaine, she starts asking people, and the first couple says no, that and then just get in their car. And then Elaine said, as they get in their car, she says, "We're not skinheads." I'm like, the fuck? What the hell did that come from?
Skinheads is a big thing in the 90s too.
I guess. It comes up, I guess Nazis come up in this show a lot.
Yeah.
It's like...
It transitioned at some point. It was like Germans, Nazis were always the bad guy thing in movies. And then it transitioned to Russians somewhere around, I don't know, Armageddon or a little bit after. Yeah. Before 9/11. Then after 9/11, it was always terrorists. And then it's kind of gone back to Russians again. So Nazis might have another uprise in the entertainment industry soon.
It'll just circle back to Germans.
Yeah.
And Americans, always a good guy.
Yeah. You guys are great.
The best. Anyways, so...
Eagle comes down screaming across the screen. Fireworks go off. You show all your guns off.
Just... It was like, was it somebody made like a little meme or whatever, not a meme, like a little video of like a bald eagle kind of as it's walking on the ground, and they animated like cartoon like guns on it, and then a flag on its back while it's playing America, fuck yeah.
Did you know that eagles don't scream like that? You know when you see an eagle like in an animation, it goes, that's a hawk. It's the sound of a hawk. Eagles like chirp. It's so sad. There's like look it up one time. Google what does an eagle actually sound like. There's a reason they make it scream like a hawk.
It just does the pigeon coo.
Yeah.
So, and then Elaine, so she got shot down, even though she wasn't a skinhead. She now asks a couple of I don't know, younger women. I assume that they're younger because they're hip, 20-somethings. They're wearing their cool jackets, their hair,
giggling at everybody.
Yeah, and they just laugh at Elaine and leave her with her dying fish. And another guy just like straight up just ignores her. So she's getting pissed. She's getting shot down here. Yeah. Jerry was right. And then we're going back to Jerry and Kramer. And he convinces Jerry to go behind a car and piss.
Yeah.
It's organic.
Now, I don't remember this in the show, but this also showed up in the script. It said, Jerry looked at Kramer's sneakers and says, those are really ugly sneakers. Where'd you get them? And Kramer said, right here in the mall. But I don't remember seeing that when I watched the episode.
No, that's why the script, maybe they never added that scene to the show.
Yeah.
I don't know where they got these scripts from either.
Well, I never had this happen until this one. And the website uses different people to put the scripts in. So I think someone's just fucking with us.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find this guy's name and I'll send him a strongly worded letter.
Look here, dickhead. You're fucking up my show.
I'm stealing your work for my podcast.
Just repeating your homework. You set it all up for me, and I'm just gonna spike the ball here.
Yeah.
Out of bounds still.
Yeah.
Damn it. So, Kramer makes it seem like he's gonna have Jerry's back, like be watch.
Mm-hmm.
And Kramer's just gone. Because by the time he's finished, Jerry turns around. There's a security guard. He's caught.
Yeah,
knew exactly what he was doing. So it cuts to the security guard's office, and Jerry's pleading his case. He has to do it. It's dangerous. He could get uromycetitis poisoning and die.
He's just talking out of his ass.
He's just lying, and making shit up. And it's pretty good. He's just he can't. He's just I'll just keep. Here's a shovel. Just keep digging. Self in a hole here. I like this little one here. So it's I've been issued a public urination pass by the city because of my condition. Unfortunately, my little brother ran out of the house with it this morning. Him and his friends are probably peeing around the city, peeing all over the place. That's a thing. And then now they're oh, Charlie, the golden ticket. Yes. The golden shower ticket. Hello.
Golden shower ticket.
Hello.
You raised me to it.
They're just pissing everywhere. It's
I'm going to cut out where you say golden shower ticket. I'm going to leave me in. So it looks like I made the joke.
You're just golden shower ticket. Got it. I freeze frame for enough time for you to get your applause. You add in applause. God damn it.
Oh, that's the laugh one. I have a clap one somewhere. No, I don't have. I can't find it. I have a button that does clapping.
It's one of those. The laughing one works too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just making shit up, and then cuts to the rest of the crew there. The three of them are yelling for Jerry, and then they can't find him, and then they're getting frustrated, and Elaine decides to Scooby-Doo it, and let's split up, gang. And she's oh, George is no, we're gonna find him. Then we lost you. She's I'll be back in 5 minutes. And then George is falling apart at the seams here. Oh, what's the difference? We'll all be dead eventually. Yeah. So he's already talking about death. And then Kramer and him start talking about death and afterlife, etc. Kramer isn't bothered by it. And then George is freaked out by it. And that makes him more pissed that somebody like Kramer isn't bothered by death.
Yeah. Right before that, though, when Elaine's walking behind the Rick Rubin looking motherfucker, and she's screaming at him. Mm-hmm. They got the long hair and the beard and the hat on and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's Larry Charles. He's one of the writers. He wrote most of the episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Or helped write most of it. So that was him
his
putting
cameo.
himself into the show, his cameo. And I was watching him walk, I'm is that other Larry that writes the show? And then Ashley did the research while I was watching, and yeah, it was him.
No, that's pretty good.
He looks like a young Rick Rubin.
But yeah, so they're just kind of going on about oh yeah, somebody like you who doesn't really care about dying, you're going to live to be 120 years old. Me, I could die tomorrow kind of thing. Cuts back to the security office, and Jerry's still pleading his case. And then he's well, you never actually saw me pee. I could have been pouring out a bottle of water for all you know. Actually, I was. So how about that? A case of mistaken identity. So he's just that guy's well, you're right.
It could have been water. You didn't have a bottle in your hand, but it could have been.
So, and then the whole detaining in the security office thing, they can't do that shit. They essentially, I guess, could write you a ticket, which they end up getting later on. But I'm why is he still there? It's it's not a police officer.
The only reason they held him so they can, the part that comes up. But that's the only reason he would be in there. You couldn't actually just hold somebody because he peed on the floor.
It's okay, probably a ticket, I guess.
Yeah.
Which probably wouldn't be enforced by a security guard.
Yeah. Who's going to collect that?
Yeah. It would be a cop. Yeah. So anyway, so like not to like just poke holes in the story here. Actually,
I don't even like Seinfeld.
But I just remember back in the day, working in a mall, I still do. Work with my buddy Kyle, co-host of Tone Jerks. So back in the day, he used to skate around to get different parts of the mall. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go on my lunch break and get food from this part. In order to get there faster, skateboard.
Mm-hmm.
The security guards were always out for him. And it was pretty funny that they would chase him with like golf carts. And he's a bigger guy, but he could zoom on that Sector 9, baby. And he would zoom, and then he'd duck down, stop, and he'd hide behind cars as they pass. Then he goes back and just skates the other way. So it's like, imagine like Pac-Man kind of walk. And he's like, nope, going around the parking lot, dodging them. It's pretty good. Because they knew where he was coming out of, and they knew kind of where he was going, so they try and head him off at the pass. It's like they had nothing to do that day. What are they going to say? Like, hey, get off the skateboard.
Yeah, no,
okay.
Like, what are you going to do?
Okay. Anyway, so back to Elaine, and she's talking to somebody, asking, telling him the story, asking if he could, drive around, help her look for the car and Jerry. And then he says he can't. I mean, so now she's like, kind of like, okay, going back and forth with the guy. It's like, why? He's like, that's not a reason that you can't. It's like, well, you don't want to. He's like, yeah, that's right. Why? I don't know. It's like, I like this. Wouldn't you get any satisfaction out of helping someone out? No, I wouldn't.
I think.
And then the guy gets in his car and leaves.
Yeah. He just doesn't care.
Wouldn't you helping somebody out? No. I don't give a shit. Basically.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. So it goes back to the office. And then, Jerry's like gonna level with the guy. Give him the straight dope, the truth.
Yeah.
But he actually tells him George's truth. The parents' anniversary, gotta be there at 6:15, etc. The guy still doesn't give a shit. And then he adds on that his father's been in a red Chinese prison for 14 years. That he's got to go see his father. And the guy, still doesn't move him. Cuts back to George and Kramer. Kramer's talking about how his friend has a fat fetish. He doesn't date women under 250 pounds. George doesn't give a shit. And then Kramer's just still going like he's working a bit. It's like, fat fetish? What do you do with all that fat? Do you just grab it? And he starts like demonstrating. It's like a wrestler would do.
Killer Kowalski.
Killer Kowalski. A pro wrestler would just grab somebody's stomach and squeeze the shit out of it. It's like, that's what you do with these big women. He's like, I guess. But also it just demonstrates that on George. But he's like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Don't do that. You're gonna squeeze the piss out of me or whatever. Like he's a doll or something like that. So then Kramer's like, well, hey, this worked out for Jerry. Why don't you just go behind that car? Because Kramer's got the bright idea.
Yeah,
like,
no one's seen Jerry since, but it worked out for him.
Yeah, I think it was earlier. It's like George, like it's like something out of a movie. Guy goes to take a piss behind a car, and he disappears for the rest of his life. He goes into another dimension or something. And Kramer's like, hey, it worked out so well for him because it didn't bother Kramer at all.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, just go do it. I got a bright idea. And then he does, and George gets caught by the same security guard. So it cuts.
Who left Jerry alone in his office?
Yeah, which he could have left.
Yeah, or pissed on the floor.
Yeah. Oh, damn. I didn't notice that part. See that little detail, man. Hopefully somebody got fired for this blunder.
Goodbye, Larry David.
Yeah. Because he could. It's not like he could lock it from the outside.
Just locks him in his office because he peed on the floor.
Yeah. He's there for a while. Anyways, so he brings George in. And then, George is, the tail end of telling him, what's going on. It's like the anniversary, 6:15, He just heard that same story from Jerry. But Jerry punched it up with a red Chinese prison detail. So Kramer and Elaine, now they're yelling for, George and Jerry, respectively, separate. So the gang's, falling apart. They're all split up. It's chaos. Setting the scene here. So it cuts to a stand-up bit about how you can tell somebody, is lost when they do the look behind, look around move. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no one knows, And no one who knows where they're going does that move. Like, you don't see a pilot. They open the door and they like, and then shut it. Was it back Ohio that way? Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Just to do with it. Just a quick little punch up there. Anyways, so the boys are released from detainment. They're walking, and then they see Mercedes-Benz.
Detainment, more like P-tainment.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. They're on the reprieve. Got something like that. Anyway, so they see George. He spots a Mercedes-Benz parked like an asshole across two spots. George is pissed, and Jerry's kind of egging him on. It's like, yeah, who does he think he is? George is going to take this guy down a peg and spit on the car. It's like, you should. And then he immediately pusses out as soon as the guy comes out to the car, and he starts kissing the guy's ass. It's like,
yeah, nice car.
Nice car. Germans are the engineering. Da, 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 da. And he's like, what do they like? This is what he says. What do they get for a tune-up on this? The fuck does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
So how much you pay for a tune-up? Okay. And the guy just ignores him and drives off. And then the guys, they find Elaine and let her know that they got caught peeing. It's like, oh, here's my ticket. Yeah, look. And then the fish aren't doing so hot. And Elaine, she asks two Jim Bros, a couple of beefcakes over there, to drive them around the mall. They say no.
If that was today, they'd definitely have Salt Life stickers on their car.
Yeah. They're big buff guys. And then she's pissed. So she tells them off, like, oh yeah, sure. Go home to your dumbbells. Go work on your pecs and your lats. We're all really impressed. And that stops them. They turn around like, what the hell are they going to do? Beat her ass?
Yeah.
That's what I didn't get. I'm like, all right. They probably would have still been walking away. It's not like they stop in their tracks, turn around, and then George is like, oh, pulls her away. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to fight her?
Yeah. Beat up Elaine.
Just pow, 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 pow.
They're just show muscles anyway. They probably couldn't take her.
27 hit combo. Pow, 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 pow. Got her.
E-Honda.
Yeah. So now they're together, the three of them, without Kramer. All the cars look alike. They don't know where they've looked yet. George is going to lose it. Like, they're lost. They really don't know which way they
George
came
is
from.
getting upset.
George is getting upset. And then a car passes them with a lot of exhaust fumes. Elaine's coughing. They're falling apart. It's thrown in the towel here.
Yeah.
It's looking grim for our heroes. And then, like an angel, the pretty woman from before passes by. And then, so George, Jerry mentions, like, George, go, talk to her. Ask her if she can drive us around. That's your opening. Let her know that we're lost. Da, 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 da. And then it works. She's super nice. She helps him out. And they get in her car, and then she introduces herself to George in a flirty way. I'm Michelle. And then they, finally something good happens. Looking up for George here. And then immediately cuts to her kicking them out of her car. Get out! Apparently George said some, comments about Scientology. I had touched a nerve there.
Yeah. She
a
got
touchy punch.
Mad.
Yeah, she got pissed. And then, but she happened to, kick him out right in front of Kramer's car. Great.
Yeah,
This is awesome.
well.
They're all, it worked out for them in the end. They're all excited, except no Kramer.
Yeah. And we didn't see this coming.
And they need to be, all four of them. And then Kramer's the one, especially with the keys. So, cuts to the next scene where obviously time has passed. They're sitting on Kramer's car. And guess who comes up? Kramer with his AC unit. He's found the car. He found the guys and gal. And the AC unit, he lost it. He forgot where he put it. And then George mentions, oh, did you find it at Purple 23? Like, yeah.
Kramer's like, you know where it was?
Could have used you, George. Says what time it is. It's 7:45 now. And then 7:45 by the time they're about to leave. The show starts at 8 p.m. Well, that's going to be a problem. No shit. And then Kramer shoves the AC and then Kramer shoves the AC unit in his trunk. And apparently
he, yeets it in there.
Yeah. Apparently he fucked up his lip. Busts open his lip during that scene. But he just kept going.
So that's what happened. He took it and he because he had the full weight and it barely fit in there. So he put it in, bounced his face off it, cut his lip, and Elaine started laughing. And Elaine and Jerry both started laughing. And then they kind of cut that part and moved on. But on the outtakes, it showed the whole part. So Elaine's laughing and Michael Richards looks at Elaine and goes, or Julia, and he goes, "I really hurt myself, Elaine," and rubs the blood off his lip. And then she just lost it laughing. And then I guess the one directing is screaming "We're not cutting anything," because they're all tired, they're exhausted. We're going to keep it rolling. Whatever we get, we get.
Yeah.
So pull together and finish
it
off. Yeah.
I got to check that blooper, but it's you could even just tell what's in the show. He bounced his fucking face off that thing. It's oh my God. Yeah. Oh man. So, let's see. Oh, and then, after they get it in the trunk, Kramer asks about the fish and, they're no good there either. They didn't make it.
Yeah.
They all get in the car and it doesn't start. It's just jun, 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 it doesn't turn over. So all four of them are in this empty parking lot, still stuck in that garage.
And that was not part of the script.
Mm-hmm.
In the actual script, they start the car, they drive away, and one of them says, "This is going to be really expensive. How long were we parked here?" So they make a joke about how long they're in the parking garage. But they got in the car, went to start it, and it wouldn't start. That was real. The car was just a piece of shit and it didn't start. And then Michael Richards just played with it. He's shaking the steering wheel and turning the key. But if you rewatch it, or if you're on YouTube and you're watching the end of this episode, I'm going to clip it in there. You can see Elaine looks out the window away from us because she starts laughing when the car won't start.
Yeah.
Because this is all right after he hit his lip and they didn't stop recording. So it was all in the same minute.
Yeah.
And then Jason Alexander also looks away from the camera. You can see him kind of laughing and look away.
Yeah.
And then while they're recording it, Michael Richards got out of the car and looked around and then got back in the car and kept trying to start the car. And then Jerry just lost it. So they had to cut that part out because they're all laughing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like.
But he's the only one that stayed in character. Everyone else loses character and he just stays in character all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a whole lot of the bloopers, but I think that was the biggest thing. It's Michael Richards was, very serious about, playing Kramer.
Yeah.
And they'd, fuck up a lot of times and he'd be like, "Can we just finish this, guys?" And then he goes back to Jerry.
Yeah.
He just goes back. It's if we could just fucking finish this scene here. Jerry.
He's good.
So yeah, it's pretty funny. So I think that was a perfect ending. That's what I think with this episode. Some of these parts weren't planned out, but it worked out so well. Think of how exhausted.
And that's what they said for that ending.
Were.
They said they were blessed with it because the ending they had wasn't great, and the ending that just kind of happened was one of the best endings they had. So
yeah, it just ends it that they're still stuck there. The thing won't start.
Yeah.
So ends with a bit about mall garage naming, it's super forgettable. It's colors, numbers, letters, da 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 da. It's it should be something more, rememberable or memorable. Rememberable. Easy to remember, more memorable. Your mother's a whore, or my father's an abusive alcoholic. You'd remember that.
Yeah.
So I'm yeah, I guess you got something there, Jerry. It was just I guess that's a quick joke. I feel the one he just got I wonder if he got to a point where he's just trying to make jokes that fit an episode as opposed to
I think
work in bits.
Comedy's one of those things you come up with your jokes, but if you're being forced to come up with your jokes, it's anything great. If someone's play me a song, you don't remember how to play any song ever.
Yeah, and I don't think it's terrible. It's just okay. It's more hey, what about this? You ever think about this? It's a not fleshed out kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's yeah. Anyways, I guess there's a mall downtown in San Diego where it's fruit levels. You're on Apple. You're on, the Big Apple. No, it's and I'm that's not really helpful either.
No. But today, you park your car, you take a picture of the sign that you're parked by, and you find it. And
even so, it's a great episode. I mean, but this really, and it's an iconic one. This is like up there with the Chinese restaurant.
This one, like everyone knows. Yeah.
So even though, kind of makes it sound like I don't like the episode, it's awesome. Still actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, not to be like point out from like 2022, this totally wouldn't happen nowadays. Like you get the concept and you like get the story, but with like Apple Maps and stuff like that, at least I'm sure it's the same for like Google. Like it will put a pin almost automatically, like when you stop your car and you've parked it.
Yeah.
It's like parked car location. So, and even then, if it didn't, you could always open up maps and put a pin where you are, and it will come back. You could always like, oh, I need to walk to that pin. So, like sometimes I'll play a show and there's not best parking or whatever, and then I gotta park like, half a mile over a mile away. And I gotta walk, and because it's like I'm basically going zigzagging down through, different blocks. I'm like, okay, found it here. I'm never gonna remember this. Put a pin in it, and you said take a picture of the street.
Yeah.
And then you could always go back to it. So even then, I'm like, okay, that's one thing. And then the whole like part with George and his parents. It's like with smartphones or cell phones, you could have just called them, say, hey, I'm running late. I'm not going to be able to do. I can't make it today. Whatever. Yeah. You guys can go because I'll send you an email with the tickets to the show.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't make a show like this today because there's solutions to all these minor inconveniences. We have simple solutions now. Mm-hmm. We're watching like a Halloween movie every night this month pretty well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we did Scream last night. And one scene, his cell phone falls out, like early on in the movie. The cell phone falls out of the pocket and it's like, oh my God, you have a cell phone. You must be the killer. And then when he's being interrogated, like, why did you have a cell phone? I'm like, oh my God, that's 20 years ago.
Everybody fucking has one? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even in the show, they mentioned about like, oh, if his dad had a car phone or satellite phone or whatever, then he would be able to catch him on the drive over to his house. And it's like, oh, what do you think his dad, how much would it be to get his dad to have a phone like that? They kind of make that joke. I'm like, everybody has a phone nowadays.
My grandmother.
But, yeah. Not that it's like, oh, it makes the episode bad, but it's just kind of something I noticed. I'm like, everything would have been fixed if they had a smartphone.
Yeah, exactly. We solved all the world's a better place. No, it's not a better place. It's a worse place. But we can take care of those minor inconveniences.
Yeah. But yeah, awesome episode. I think we were texting earlier today that I watched it last night and I was like, I don't think, it didn't wow me as much as I thought it was going to, or the hype of the episode, something about it. And then, I don't know, maybe I was just in I don't know, I wasn't even in a bad mood. But I just rewatched it again today and I was taking my notes. I'm like, this actually is great. It's funny. It flows really well. It's great that it was in, just one location, the parking garage. And I think all my critiques or whatever of it aren't bad. Like the whole, like, why there's like 20 people in this garage in this one shot.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't detain Jerry like that.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense. It's still funny. Still great.
It was a good show. I had the same concerns going in. I was like, it seems like such an iconic, everyone knows this episode. So like, is it going to be as good as I remember it being? And it was good. I still really enjoyed it. So
yeah, I think with all these, I'm, just such a fan of the show that I'm like, I don't know if it's as good as it was. I'm like, no, it is. It's fucking great.
And in the reverse, we're like, I remember this episode not being that great, and we watched like, I love this episode.
Yeah, exactly. And then even the one with the dog one, I think it was like, oh, this is not a good episode, but you break down all the jokes. I'm like, actually, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's just a dog abuse and the barking dog.
Even a bad episode of Seinfeld's pretty fucking good. It's the whole joke with pizza. I'm like, oh, bad pizza is still pretty good.
A bad episode of Seinfeld is better than an episode of Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. It was.
We get canceled now. All the Big Bang Theory fans out there.
I don't know if you're a Friends fan or not. Never got into the show.
Ashley's a Friends fan.
There's, I think somebody found a random poll. It could have just been made up of like 95% of people, prefer Friends over Seinfeld. And then it gets to have the little scene is like 95% of the world's population undateable.
Undateable.
If you like Friends, undateable. Anyways, let's bring it on home here. Let's start up that car. Let's get a drive home back to New York.
Yeah. So if you guys want to find us online, I'm putting a Linktree link down below, and you can find it all there. Makes it easier. Less links, one link, everything's there, and it's designed to match the color scheme of our logo, so it's really pretty too. Go check it out.
Please look at it.
Yeah, look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what.
All right, yeah. So yeah, get on there. Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, all that shit. Check it out, and then we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye now.